Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. A different day, a different time, a different date. It's Friday night all around the world, but very especially in Florida, where we're joined by Matt Dunlevy from SkySkopes, and in Norway, I think you
That's
said
correct.
Knut,
Yep.
Knut Gustavsen from eSmart Systems, and also sat there, but unable to talk at the moment, is Jamie Mahne from the Energy Authority. Is it the Energy Authority? Energy Authority? How am I supposed to say it, Matt?
It's the Energy Authority, but sometimes because it's an acronym, I hear a lot of it's the T, but it's just referred to as TEA.
Right, Matt, you're a very long way from home. You're normally up north in the cold, and you're down the bottom right-hand side of America in the warm. Obviously, we all know
Yeah.
Hurricane Irma's just gone through there, and there's all manner of problems. Perhaps you could unpack exactly what you're doing there.
So we're down here for a couple of reasons. The first was for damage assessment and hurricane relief, flight operations. We would fly to see if there's debris on power lines. We would be flying to see if there are any failures in the power lines, say with thermal imagery. And also just to even just capture videography of the repair crews to assure the clients of the power companies that these utilities were doing everything that they can to not just restore power, but they were also being accountable to their clients, showing them, that they won't rest until power is restored. And, I saw the operations going down here, and it was upbeat, and the power should be coming back on all over Florida soon. Some places it's going to be slower than others, but the admirable recovery efforts of the utilities here in northern Florida and Jacksonville, where we were deployed for most of the time, the efforts have been going very well, and perhaps even ahead of schedule. So the first missions that we were doing were for disaster relief, and now while we're deployed, also going out and getting some extra data, just inspection data, so that the utilities can get a sense of the multiple different uses of UAS for what their assets will require in the future, meaning quick restoration and maintenance.
So obviously, over the years, this has been your idea. This was going to be your stock in trade, what was going to happen, but you weren't going to do it under quite such pressure, I suppose. So have you at SkySkopes learnt a great deal from what's been going down?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's always a learning process with UAS. It's there are what we find, news sources like yours, and we see there's aviation literature, but there's less literature that one can educate themselves with for a disaster as it pertains to UAS. So I mean, not just with disaster relief, not just with utility maintenance data. Every mission that we fly, there's always something that we learn. And, we're lucky that we've been around long enough that, we've seen most of the different use cases that are viable right now. And we can bring those experiences to the new different types of flights that will be coming our way. But, probably the best literature that we've seen so far comes from an acquaintance of yours, Gary, Gene Robinson, and he wrote the first to deploy paper, and I sent that out to all of our people before we got here. I've been in discussions with Gene about best practices for how UAS should be used to recover from disasters such as hurricanes. And there are some other experts out there too that are looking into the subject. I know Oak Ridge Research Laboratory is looking into it, and others as well. So if we can give some of our experiences to the people that are putting these scholarly works or best practices, white papers together for posterity, that's just that much more fulfillment that we'll have gained from these missions.
Yeah, I think it certainly justifies some sort of a big get together in a pub somewhere, doesn't it? Of all the various people that have been out and doing it and getting it together. It's all this knowledge that's been gathered so quickly has got to be put together in one place. Otherwise, it's kind of wasted, isn't it? And dare I say it, commercial vested interest can't be allowed to take priority here. Life saving and restoration of power and utilities must, must come first, and I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. I'm very glad that that Gene's work's been of use, and it's been a while since I've heard it spoken about actually. So yeah, no, he's a good egg, but don't let I won't say that out loud. I won't let him hear me say that. So Knut, well, I'll jump back to you in a second, Matt. But Knut, you're in Norway, so what on earth have you got to do with this?
Exactly. We are the company is trying to do the magic here. So we have a vision that we should try to stitch together all the analysis or the data collection happening in the drone. So from the different sensors, and we have different drones and different sensors for different missions, and that's where SkySkopes is coming in and guiding us safely in the air. We are taking that in real time, the data, putting it through our mobile operation center, which is a truck that we have developed now in Norway and also in North Dakota, which is a mobile operation center streaming live data from the drones into the truck, and with kind of communication equipment that is fit for within and beyond line of sight. And taking that and putting that into the cloud software from Microsoft that we are working very closely with, and giving that to various operation centers. It could be several operation centers at JA and TA. It can even be crew out in the field that can get the same data. So we are trying to kind of cover the whole value chain from drone operation into operation center and the operation or the field crew, to be able to restore electricity faster. This is one of the scenarios, of the two scenarios that we are working on. That means emergency operation and also then planned operations for inspections. So, but again, we are a software company, so trying to kind of prove that it's possible to cover the whole value chain.
So I'll put this. So first of all, I'll ask you two things. So if it's possible, without giving away too much proprietary information, what sort of data is it? And secondly, was your company ready for an event at this scale?
Yeah, I mean, we have been dreaming about this for now 4 years, and suddenly, the data or the flight operation with SkySkopes and the drones, at the price level that is affordable, and then the data collection coming from Microsoft, which is our biggest partner. So we are actually doing the same thing like the Tesla and Googles are doing in autonomous driving. We have to recognize the same objects in real time. We have to see if it's a difference to the baseline, if there is something, some errors with it, and then putting all this together. So there is a tool that can help the operator spotting errors, so they don't have to look through hours and hours with data and images and everything. So that is, so the technology is coming together. Now it's just getting the operation to work from end to end. And that is our big task.
So right now you're probably getting terabytes of data then that'll help you, real data, not just a little break, one tree on the, I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead here, but if I'm thinking that perhaps the sort of failures you found before have been a couple of trees down a bit of a line, and you know what the aircraft's going to go and see. So that might skew your perception or data a little bit. Whereas this, you're going to be flying down power lines you know nothing about, and everything you're going to see is going to be almost unknown. And what size power lines are we talking about here? Are we talking about the big marching ones, or are we talking about 11 kVA ones? We're talking about everything.
Yeah, I mean, Matt can tell what they have been inspecting, but you are correct that they, we are looking for unknown things, but also known things, and that's what we have to handle, and that's why this is so challenging. But if it can kind of tell them based on a standard power line, what we flew the day before or the year before, we can tell you that something's fishy here. And then we have to also have people at the same time looking and to see for other things that can be a threat to the operation and that can help them in restoration.
And I suppose it means that you ultimately what you'd like to be doing. It would have been good to have baseline inspection of every single power line in Florida, and then you'd be seeing a lot more changes. But yeah, no doubt it is helping. It's a pity that Jamie's not with us, because I'd very much like to hear what the energy authorities' take on all this is. How would it normally done if you guys aren't in the loop? How would it have been done normally?
Matt is very good at that, and he can tell you. I'm just going to pitch in a little bit for Jamie. They are serving public-owned utilities in North America or in the US, and they have 50+ customers that Jamie is serving, and they now want to kind of build that library and that you are describing, the baseline, building that up. So gradually, together with the clients, they can have a baseline. So when they are flying and see differences, they can act on that based on the software that we are providing. So they are moving now more and more into the analytics space to kind of give better services to the utilities and serving as one center for all, so they don't have to do everything individually.
So Matt, I'll come back to you. Sorry, being rude. Matt, are you using multi-rotors or fixed-wing aircraft?
So right now, mostly we're doing multi-rotors. The vertical takeoff and landing and the ability to hover right now is indispensable, and we're finding that it's a lot faster too. In order to deploy and get birds in the air and get them back in the air. So we need to be able to orbit things at our own speed, namely points of interest and say the utility towers. We've been using. I've got a there's the old Matrice 600 right here. Just in the back with me. So we've been flying the Matrice 600s. We've been flying the Inspires, and our pilots come out of the University of North Dakota. So I'm confident that if they want to fly fixed wings, that they could. A lot of them have built fixed wings from scratch, but for disaster relief. And also right now, at least for the predictive maintenance data gathering of transmission lines are best done, at least for the meantime, with multi-rotors.
Because it's what I'm thinking. If you're going to make a baseline study, then that's a lot of flying, isn't it? A lot of flying. So I would have thought fixed wing would be good, but obviously one day in the not so distant future, I think. These aircraft will be flying up and down the lines by themselves. So there'll be nobody in the loop, and they'll be gathering data all day long, doing their own thing, probably taking themselves on task when they've seen that the weather's right, the light's right, and just adding data points to the knowledge of those utilities and lines. Is that where you think that's a heretic thing to say? Part 107 pilots go nuts if you suggest anything like that, because but is that how you see it going, Matt? What do you think?
No, actually, I think that if you consider the word pilot, you might not always have for the foreseeable future. You're going to want pilots, but at the end of the day, when you consider the data analytics, when you consider the maintenance of an aircraft, when you consider the ratio of how many aircraft per pilot, and then per, the word I would use would be operator, and then when you're flying beyond visual line of sight, you're always going to want someone who is native to that technology. And right now, the people who are licensed manned pilots are proving themselves to be extremely valuable as pilots in the unmanned aircraft industry, and I think that autonomy is going to change a lot of things. But I still think that the people who are getting their education in unmanned aircraft systems. And I mean, you know, the 4-year degree, for example, at the University of North Dakota or at, you know, Kansas State University, these degrees that are in UAS teach them about not just the unmanned aircraft, but of course, you know, that third letter in the acronym systems. And, you know, so what I'm trying to say is that if they're not pilots, these people are easily able to also be operators of the systems in the unmanned aircraft system. So, I mean, they'll still be extremely useful when we see more scaled autonomy.
Blast! I forgot you were from the school. Blast! Great company answer. really, really good. So, all right, okay. Let's make another definition then. I'll just go and get up. Funny enough, I did take the Part 107 test, but you know, all I've done is gone off and taken the parts. What's the difference between someone that's just gone off and taken the Part 107 and is looking for work, and somebody that's been through your? I didn't want to talk about it, but we are now. It's been through your whole system. Are they a much more rounded and experienced person? Are they more likely, if you go off and do one of your courses or one of the courses in the universities you know about, are you more likely to get work at the end of it with, say, one of the big utility companies or something like that?
Well, absolutely. I think that the one thing that we can grasp onto and that will ring true through the life of the SUAS and in general the UAS industry is going to be that education. And, you know, the 4-year degree, whether that institution of higher education requires those pilots to go out and get their Part 61 manned private pilot's license, or if they just require their undergraduates to get that Part 107, that degree at the end of the day is definitely going to make them that much more competitive for careers in UAS. And, you know, at least for the foreseeable future, I still see students that are getting their manned certificates in 4-year programs, even though it's that much more time that they have to take to get it, and even though it's that much more expensive, those pilots, and especially if they do have RC experience, are the pilots that organizations like mine are looking for, and are the pilots that I want to see flying assets for disaster relief for hurricanes in the United States and elsewhere in the world. So, you know, I think that, you know, Part 107 pilots are going to be the ones, you know, that, you know, they're going to have a lot of fun, and maybe they can get some commercial viability for, you know, one of their organizations. But autonomy is going to be, you know, if you're thinking about, you know, who is going to suffer from autonomy gearing up in UAS, it's going to be that Part 107 certificate holder who holds that and nothing else. But, you know, at least they'll have a license to go have some fun, and hopefully they've learned how to operate safely.
Again, fantastic company answers. I'm loving it very much. And I think you're bob on right. You're bob on right, because when the systems do go completely autonomous, the first people to be put in charge of them will be the ones with the greater aviation knowledge. And I always like to be controversial. Knut, you know, I am also a pilot as well. And funnily enough, I've done a lot of flying where you went to university, and that's in Bristol. But I suspect that you would like Knut from the, or I don't suppose you care actually from the data side of things, how the data arrives at you. You just want the data.
Oh yeah, we are much into data. I mean, I had my computer science degree from Bristol, so I'm well educated. But you know, data is very good, but you know, we have to have the right data, and it's like you know, we have to have the right UAS or UAV. And when we do the operation, you know, you set fixed wing for the long operation, and you know, have surveillance, and then you know, the rotor for inspecting closely. And that is one side of the concept that we have. And then the sensors is extremely important. And then the processing capacity in the drone. And we are working very closely with Microsoft and partners of them to be able to process as much as possible in the drone. It's called edge processing, so that we can send all the just the valuable data down to the truck and then to the operation center. So, you know, the data is key. And that's why we have found each other, SkySkopes and eSmart and others, to be able to kind of glue all this together. And then we're going to show you a picture here of what we have put together. It's the Thundercloud truck, and that we are operating and sending all the data through the communication link at the roof into the truck. We have 2 screens in the back seat where we have one for the flight operation and one for the data analytics, and then the operator and the drone. And all this we have sent down to Florida so that they can train and learn, and we can learn, all of us. One issue that has been a great learning for us is kind of the communication, and that is kind of partly breaking down, and the live streaming is not possible. So having a steady and solid communication to the operation center for emergency response is key. So all this is learning, and every part of the chain is important.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you how they're doing it. So is that currently LTE, or is it a radio link at the moment?
It's a broadband radio link that's on the top of the truck that's communicating with the drone, and we are putting that into the drones that we are using to have a steady beyond line of sight communication. Is Kongsberg Group of Norway that has made this for sea communication, oversea communication, or for ships. It's a maritime solution.
Okay, and as you say, you're only sending the important data. So the aircraft is, or the computer on board the aircraft's having a look and it's going, oh, that looks a little bit dodgy. I'm going to flag that up and I'm going to send that image. And then will the operator then change the route, or then be called to, okay, do another circuit of that, won't you, or something like that? Is there that sort of feedback in that, or is it all happening on a second flight?
And that's what kind of the training, and that's why that's Matt called them operators, because they have to kind of, interrupt, or they have to kind of say that, let's follow the standard procedure. If we see something that's fishy, we go the standard route, or the operator can get, a message from the operation center. We want to inspect this further, and then they can kind of take over. So there is a close cooperation with the flying and the analytics and the operation center back home. And that's kind of the skill set that an operator have. Today, we more or less have to have 3 people in the truck, and in the future, Matt will have 1 guy in the truck that can kind of launch and land the drone even while driving. And
does the can the operator flag something that they've seen as well and bring that into the whole thing? So then he flags that, and that gets noted. And okay, and are you moving on? I'm guessing there's standard infrastructure maps that the energy authorities have. So each pole is numbered, and you're going down a line to that one, that one, that one, that one. I should imagine that's what you're doing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and it's the kind of the Jacksonville Energy Authority that owns the infrastructure, and they have geoposition of all the poles and everything. So when they want to inspect, they are just dragging the geo refs, or the flight route into the connected drone system, and then they can dispatch. That can be done by operation center, or it can be done by Matt's pilots themselves. So they can get an indication that you should fly this route, and then they can kind of plot this into the system and fly. And
tell me, is this the only? Does eSmart only deal with drone data? What else does eSmart do?
We started with analyzing smart meter data and all kinds of new sensor data from smart grid and IoT devices, and then we said the utilities are more or less blind to their own infrastructure. Then they need to be called by someone saying that, hey, there is something happening on your grid. So we wanted to extend their visibility of their own infrastructure using modern equipment, and then drone was the natural thing. And now we and Matt are doing this on the power line, and also oil and gas. And critical infrastructure that we see is necessary, and building up that.
And if there's now it's a big event, so there are going to be issues. But in the normal day-to-day running of a power grid, can data allow you to see problems beginning to start?
Yeah, beginning to start. That was a good phrase. Yeah, exactly. You know, we look for instance, cracks in insulators or in poles, or we can see that they are degrading. We can see that there is some heat pattern on this transformer. We can see that there is a tree, you know, coming closer and closer. So in 3 months, you should do these suggested actions to this. So that's called predictive maintenance, and that's the ultimate goal. We want to be ahead of the game, and that's the kind of intelligent asset management system that we are building.
And you don't have a sensor on every pole, or do you?
No. We have the sensor in the drone, and that should be sufficient. It's going to be too much to be.
Okay, so in your existing systems, are there ways of fault detecting, or it relies on the drone flying the line as a big manned helicopter? Because that's what they do in the big manned helicopters, isn't it? All looks very, very exciting as they trundle along. Just been asked, Green Silver's asking in the comments, do you use guys are using FLIR at all?
Matt?
I don't know, Matt, if you want to answer that, what the sensors are that you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. We're using thermal sensors. We've got FLIR sensors down here, and we're also using a thermal sensor from ICI. Gary Strahan made a side-by-side EO sensor that has very good zoom capabilities, and of course, in the same sensor packages, an infrared sensor. We were able to see a lot more than we thought we were going to, because you know, this is the first time we've deployed the ICI thermal. We've flown FLIR sensors a lot, but the another thing that we were able to provide for the JEA Emergency Operations Center was a live stream. So we've deployed multiple crews out to the field, and if they would have seen that there was something out that, you know, they could detect with an electro-optical live stream, but they you know, wanted to confirm that, you know, if something was failing, you know, maybe they would have wanted to switch it over to a thermal sensor, and, you know, with the click of a button, we can just tell the sensor operator to do that, and it switches the live stream that you know, feeds back to the EOC, and it helps. It's definitely been a great help. We only right now are using anything that can give us full motion video, and that we can easily live stream. So FLIR sensors like the DJI Inspire 1's XTR. The FLIR XTR that integrates onto the Inspire 1. We've used different types of sensors on the Inspire 1 as well, like the X5, and you know, just the stuff that comes standard there. But right now we're using mainly DJI products, but in the future we will be using many different types of airframes, multi-rotors, and fixed wings both.
Okay, so it's all. But yeah, I mean, this event must have moved on your planning quite dramatically, or your thinking anyway. You know what your intentions are. So what's going to happen when you? Oh well, first off, how long do you think you're going to be there, Matt?
I don't think that we'll probably be here past this weekend. Restoration efforts are going very well, and you know, we've had a great you know, few weeks, because you know, we were also deployed for Hurricane Harvey, doing a lot of similar stuff in Houston, but here in Jacksonville, a lot of the restoration efforts have already been completed. I can't sing the praises of the TEA or the JEA. I did it again. TEA and JEA can't sing their praises enough. Also, eSmart Systems connected drone product has been, you know, very good, and you know, the pilots, I can say, you know, and also speaking for myself here, absolutely love going out and conducting operations in the Thundercloud truck. So you know, we'll stay as long as they let us drive that truck. Recovery efforts. The recovery efforts are pretty much done here. So right now, I'd say, you know, most of the missions are for predictive maintenance and giving utilities a taste of what's to come with the UAS industry burgeoning, and with beyond visual line of sight, autonomy, different ratios, 1 to X number of aircraft, pilots to aircraft, and I don't see us here longer than the end of this weekend.
Do you think the power industry will be clamoring for this now? Has it moved from a nice to have to a must have?
I think it's if it's not a must have right now, it's getting more obvious that it will become a must have, and it's probably either already there or just about to be a must have. A lot of the industry in UAS is kind of the quote keeping up with the Joneses, and we see that a lot also with the utility industry. If one utility has UAS going out, maybe the next one also will, and it's not just a matter of trying to stay up to date. It's also going out and getting your foot in the door. We get our foot in the door with utilities, and we're able to prove every time that UAS have a future with them because we're providing valuable, actionable data that saves their bottom line and that is safety oriented. And then when we run that data through systems such as eSmart's connected drone program, they get a better real-time picture of what their assets are doing, what's going well, what's going poorly with their assets, and they just did not have that capability before.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? Oh yes, so here I am. I've got a Part 107, or I'm interested in, because this strikes me as this is going to be almost, dare I say it, outside of big emergencies, a 9 to 5 UAS operator job. What I mean by that is steady work for someone that's got a family and would like a salary rather than going from job to job to job. So what would the career path then be to get into this when in 5 years' time, when this is a grown-up thing? What do you think the career path, how do you get there, Matt?
If you're a Part 107 certificate holder, and you haven't even purchased an aircraft yet, you're about to go get one, what's the way to make sure that you can sustain your value in the UAS industry? I still think that it's going and getting an associate's in UAS maintenance, or going and getting a bachelor's in UAS operations, or even like Knut did. You could get a background in computer science, and you can find yourself a spot at every different stop in the train of value with UAS. So if it's not education, then it's being networked, and it's also I'd say making sure that you do go and get the correct aircraft and operate it as safely as you can to make a name for yourself, finding the right partners in the industry, and then it's hopefully off to the races for someone who has a Part 107 certificate. But there's always going to be that question of, if you don't do something correctly, is autonomy going to make you and the job that you have obsolete? And I don't think that's going to be the case in many cases, but it's definitely something that weighs on us, or and that means it should also on Part 107 certificate holders.
Well, it's kind of it's a double-edged thing, isn't it? It's great that it's not great that these events happened and you're there and you're getting them. It's not a good thing. It isn't a good thing, but it's kind of been good for the industry, hasn't it? I think so. I was just thinking then, Knut, would you be looking to gather other data because as that flight goes by, there's stuff either side of the power line or whatever, there's buildings, there's all manner of data you might be collecting, or are you just really razor sharp focused on the power line?
It's an excellent question. It's tempting for a startup company like us. We are maybe a little bit above startup. We are 80 people now, but still, it's very tempting to try to cover everything. But we have now a laser sharp focus on creating the baseline for power line and oil and gas. Making some value of it, proving to utilities that this is going to save their their bottom line. And then, so that's the task we have, and we want to kind of be a world leader in the end-to-end. We're not, building truck. We should not build trucks for the rest of our life. So we're just doing that for, an example, how to kind of cover the full value chain. We can take data from helicopters, from the ground inspectors, taking mobile pictures and glue that into the same database. But I think it's a great industry to kind of help move in that direction. And then we are also into cities because we see a lot of the public-owned utilities. Is Jamie?
He was, and then he wasn't.
I can tell.
Jamie.
No, well, there we are. That was insightful.
Quick, Gary, ask him a question.
Better late than never. I'm so sorry.
No worries at all, Jamie. Jamie, thanks very, very much for joining us. And you are the T of this hangout. I don't know. I think you've been hearing most of what we've been saying. Did you want to comment on anything that we've said already?
I appreciate the time, and I apologize for the firewall issues actually that I was having. But no, I think that Knut and Matt have really summed it up pretty well. We're very glad to be able to add this capability very quickly to JEA, and I think it's been very impactful for them in terms of again safely being able to inspect the lines and the state of their system after the storm without necessarily having to put people in harm's way. And then secondly, to do that a lot more quickly than they could on the ground.
And do you see it as something now that's happening? It's going to happen, and that's that. It's not, as we said just a little while ago, not a nice to have, it's a must have now. How do you view it now?
I think absolutely. I think not just JEA, but all utilities, anytime you're meeting with a utility, no matter the topic, always safety is first. There's always a briefing and a conversation about safety. And the fact that this technology allows us to much more safely get into those inaccessible areas after a storm, I think that absolutely it's going to be a must and a best practice for all utilities coming very soon in the future.
I think we do need to organize. Well, but you can organize a meeting up at your place. You've got a big campus there, haven't you, Matt? You can, because there needs to be a proper, even with cakes and everything, there needs to be a proper meeting where people come together and work out the best practice now moving forward. I think we've seen a lot of mistakes were made in certain sides, not from you guys. Lots of people have rushed in to help, and that's not necessarily the best thing. I'm moving off topic and ranting. I'm also very aware that I've had you guys here for 50 minutes now, which is, I thought we'd sit down for a 5-minute chat. It's such an interesting subject, and it's fantastic that unmanned or RPAs are being used. For what we've all been dreaming of for the last 10 years. It's been in everybody's mind that this is how it would work, and it's fantastic that it is. Sad reason why it is, but it's fantastic that it is. I don't know. Did anyone else? I think we should probably wrap this up. So I've had you there a long time. Did anyone else? Do you want to add anything, Matt, or anyone else want to add anything?
So I don't know. Jamie's probably the one we want to hear from, because we didn't get too on with him. But Jamie, did you hear anything from JEA regarding the operations that we did in Florida?
Yes, absolutely. So I know that JEA were, one, very appreciative of the help and how quickly we were able to ramp up this help for JEA. But secondly, they felt like it was clearly a success. They had some initial capabilities here. They actually had 4 drone pilots who were licensed in the last year after Hurricane Matthew in anticipation of this type of effort, but did not necessarily have the quick strike, I guess, capabilities to really ramp up the way that we were able to do with SkySkopes and eSmart hitting the ground so quickly. And so they thought that it was a very successful effort in everything that I've heard, both from the CEO of JEA as well as their spokespeople.
So would
add one
sorry,
comment.
after you finish.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit pay a tribute to the professional pilots and that discipline. I think it's very important, and you can see it's kind of fantastic to see people when they are, pressed. Electricity is out, there is emergency, and when professional people are coming together, how fast they can kind of adapt to each other, and that. At least eSmart could see that. We were kind of more following behind, but when SkySkopes and JA and the Emergency Operations Center were working together, it was just amazing how fast they kind of adapted to each other and the routines. So I think that's also one learning from this operation.
So I guess we might have a couple of people with friends, relatives in Florida. Is there a forecast for when? How is the state of power there? Does anybody know? Is it going to be back by the weekend for everybody, or is there still several weeks out for a lot of places?
I think just being from Florida, I think that it's a mixed bag depending on the region of Florida that you're in, and really the situations of the individual utilities within Florida. I think at last count I heard that JEA had fewer than 100,000 customers who were still out of power, and so they've been doing a great job of restoring the system very quickly. I have not heard necessarily as high of a success rate. Certainly down in South Florida and the Keys, they have much bigger issues with regards to how much damage was done to their systems. So I think it's going to be a little while longer for other parts of Florida.
Absolutely. Okay, I could probably yabber on about this for hours and hours and hours, but I think if I may, if I could ask to reconvene in a month or two's time, when everyone's had time to sit back and think and look at the data and realize, because I'm sure you're going to come through a lot, you can have a lot more insights in a couple of months' time. It'd be very interesting to get some more feedback then when you've done that. And I'm rubbish at ending these things, and I'm not very good at it. So thank you very, very much for taking the time to talk to us. It's been super interesting. Thanks for setting it up, Matt. All of you be safe. Well, except for you, Knut, you're in Norway, whatever. Yeah, you just watch out for whatever you watch out for in Norway. There you go. No. Everybody be safe. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Thanks very much for all the hard work you're putting in down there. And yeah, let's reconvene in a couple of months' time, find out what's going on. And I want to learn more about all this technology. I'll put links to everything down in the bottom below. And with that, I'll say thanks very much, guys. Speak to you again soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks.
Bye.